where we can really start to mend these broken relationships and have incredible ones. And then,
so we're getting back together.
yo, what is up, guys? Welcome to another video. I have a very special guest on the Connor Murphy Show today. This is Lauren Kinnear, also known as my ex-camera girl, also known as my ex-girlfriend. Whoa, yeah, this is getting juicy. So if you want to follow her, she has an Instagram, link will be in the description below. We're going to talk about forgiveness, a very, very powerful topic. And everyone thinks that they know what forgiveness is when they don't. Everyone has the wrong idea about forgiveness. And in fact, forgiveness is much more difficult than you think, yet it's simpler. It's a paradox.
Preach it, sister.
It actually requires quite the profound spiritual awakening to really, really understand. And that's what we'll get into. And I think that if you watch this, this can be an extremely powerful video. So first of all, you know, one of the reasons that we're having this is because Lauren has actually been going through quite the spiritual awakening. She's starting to realize some interesting things about reality, and I'm super, super, super excited. So Lauren, what's the contrast between kind of how you used to think about reality and how you do now?
Well, before I was really anxious, and now I accidentally astral projected, I guess. And it changed my whole outlook on everything. Like, this all feels like a dream. It doesn't feel real at all.
Absolutely. I love it. And Lauren had a very religious background, but as you become more and more aware in reality, you'll realize that it goes much, much deeper than you think. It's not that we just live in some physical, objective, material reality, but we're also living in this subjective reality that's made of mind. And essentially the brain is creating the universe, and the universe is also creating the brain. Reality is a type of strange loop, right? It's this interesting hierarchical structure that kind of loops around on itself, and it's really difficult to conceptualize, right, with the symbolic mind, but it's something that you can actually have a deep awakening into.
That goes into like how, so I was a Christian, well, I still am Christian, but how Christianity doesn't like agree with reincarnation, but like this loop that we're in. I was looking more into like, I guess like, what is it, like a radical view of the Bible or interpretation of the Bible.
Right.
And we all have like a life purpose coming here. And it literally doesn't feel real anymore, like at all, after I astral projected. But I think that if we don't like, you know, fulfill our life purpose here, then the bright light that people see, it's them being reincarnated and like God's way of saying, okay, try again. And then if you don't do it again, it's like, try again. And that could feed into like the deja vu that people feel, and they don't really understand what, like where it comes from. But it could be that, you know, because we're the same soul just being put in another like vessel, like car, right? Like try to drive to the, you know, to the stop sign, and then we just like a crash. Like try again, here's a Prius, and then you crash again. And so I think that's why. And yeah,
I love it.
It's super interesting.
Yeah, there is absolutely a you that's beyond the mind and body. Most people identify with the mind and body. That's who they think that they are. But with deep awareness practice, you can realize in this lifetime that that's actually not who you are. You are much deeper than that. There is an eternal you that you can actually find. And this is why Buddhists will meditate for 50 years, right? That's why there are all these mystical practices. See, religion is great at conceptualizing God, but you can know God and reality at a deeper level that's beyond concept. And so I like to think of religion as a necessary stepping stone, but don't ever think of it as the final, right? The finality, right? So yeah, let's get into our relationship. These guys, oh man, I'm sure they're all in this for the drama. So there was a point, and most people who are in a relationship and then break up, they'll reach a point where they resent each other so much, they don't think that they'll ever talk to each other again, right? There was so much issues, so much toxicity that people think that, wow, I'm just going to cut this person out of my life and never talk to him again. And the issue with that is that subconsciously, this builds up so much resentment, so much guilt, right? That it can carry on with you for a long time into the future, unless somehow you learn to let this go. And what I realized is that no matter how much a person hurts another person, it never makes sense to cut someone completely out of your life. It's like escapism, right? It's like playing video games to try and escape reality. You know what I mean?
That's literally what you explained to wanting an open relationship. It's
Really?
just video games. Like, I'm just playing a game.
Oh, interesting. Well, maybe we'll get into that. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about why we broke up. So our flaws, okay? So what were some of my flaws that you saw in me?
You wanted to play a video game after almost a year of dating, like get into an open relationship. And that's not something you do after almost a year. That's what you decide in the beginning.
I see. Yeah, that was a big reason, right? And of course, you struggle with, some mental stuff like anxiety, right? Your anxiety has been pretty bad in the past. Wouldn't you agree?
Mm-hmm.
For sure, right? And me,
Yep.
I looked at that as a flaw. That was something that really bothered me because, I was really into meditation and I didn't really have this anxiety. And I was like, Lauren, like, just meditate and you'll get rid of it. And
I
you're very
know.
uncompassionate about it for sure, right?
But I have ADHD too. So when you'd say just meditate, and I'm like, I couldn't focus.
Right. And here's the difference.
You can if you want to.
Right. Here's the difference. See, in our relationship, I didn't truly accept you for who you are, right? I mean, yeah, that's usually what happens in relationships, right? See, most people in relationships, they'll see flaws in the other person. And although flaws technically exist on a relative level, these flaws are part of the imperfect perfection. Reality is this giant paradox, right? So for example, if we did not have anxiety, if anxiety did not exist, we could not contextualize peace of mind. Peace of mind would not have the same meaning to us if it weren't for anxiety, right?
That's true.
So all these flaws are actually these mandatory parts of reality. Everything in reality is so intricately connected. When you really, really dive deep, you'll realize that every facet of reality is absolutely mandatory for every other facet. That's where this idea of dependent origination comes from in Eastern cultures. Nothing exists on its own, right? An apple exists as all non-apple components, air, water, glucose, but also the color red, right? If it's a red apple.
I
right?
thought you were talking about like Apple, like iPhones for a second.
No, like apples, right? Like an apple could not exist without the experience of seeing or feeling or touching. Everything is arising dependently on everything else. And that's the same with all imperfections in reality. So this is really the key to forgiveness, okay? To really forgive, you must understand what unconditional love is, and you must see reality as this perfection. See, most people see forgiveness as kind of overlooking the truth. Oh, this person hurt me, but I'll forgive them anyway. I'll just overlook it, right? That's what we think forgiveness is, but it's not, okay? Forgiveness is realizing the perfection in the other person and that all these flaws are a necessary part of reality. See, what forgiveness really is actually giving up victim mentality. See, when you believe that someone hurt you, that's actually you that's painting a picture of being a victim in your own mind, right? You cannot be a victim unless you make yourself a victim. It's all in the conceptual mind. So if you right? So if you
don't want to be helped, if you just want to be a victim.
Yeah, then you'll just keep being a victim, right? It's actually you that creates this need for this forgiveness, if that makes sense. So, and this all stems from seeing yourself as this finite, weak, finite human in reality, rather than, and this separate, right? This separate human from the rest of the universe, rather than seeing the oneness in everything, rather than seeing your true nature as the entire universe, right? Because once you see yourself as the entire universe, if someone hurts you, that's just you hurting yourself. But of course, you would not hurt yourself for any malicious reasons. You can rearrange your perspective and see these moments of adversity as actually incredible opportunities to grow, right?
I have something to add.
For sure.
what helped me understand it, because you sounded kooky when you
Uh-huh.
said we are all God, we are all part of the one God. It helped me understand it, to put it in a way like this, like how the documents were released and this is all like a simulation,
Mm-hmm.
how it's like a test. Like, this is, I guess, from what I've studied, Earth is like, there's several different planets and different, beings doing this for like being controlled by like a higher consciousness, which could be God. But we all come from this higher consciousness, and we're just being projected from this, higher being, to see how we can learn, and how easily people can be manipulated.
Right.
And so that goes with the Bible saying like, don't get like obsessed with like worldly things like fame, money, and sex.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the Bible is like it seems like it's a very simple set of instructions meant for us to like question authority and the societal norms that we already have.
Yeah. Well, think about this, right? So God being all-knowing, I mean, anyone who conceptualizes God would probably say that God is all-knowing, right? Well, this all-knowingness comes with this limit, per se. It's not really a limit because there's a workaround. If there is a being that is all-knowing, how could it learn? Think about that.
I know.
It would be missing
we're
out.
all God.
Right. This is how God does it. God puts itself in ignorance and allows itself to learn. It's so beautiful. And you can realize that that's actually what you are. You are this infinite intelligence. Get rid of all concepts of God that you have in your mind, because if you try to conceptualize God with a finite mind, it's literally impossible. It has to go beyond concept. It has to be a direct experience, right?
I have something else to add.
Okay.
That it helps me understand it too. That when we were projected here on Earth, there was like a veil of forgetfulness. So we forgot, and that goes along with what you're saying, like we just don't realize that we're God because this is all like a test. And so it's like we have to like break through this like forgetfulness, shield, and then remember where we came from and who we actually are. And then when you break the reincarnation cycle.
I love it. Yeah, that's a great perspective to have. So yeah, this forgiveness is really all about unconditional love. So most people confuse attachment for love. Okay. So essentially, love is admiring a flower, right? You look at the flower and it's so beautiful. You love that flower. Attachment is like picking it up and like taking it with you. What happens when you pick up that flower?
You kill it.
Yeah, exactly. Right. So in most relationships, there's this attachment where you're grasping onto the other person, right? You're trying to change the other person. You don't actually desire that person exactly how they are. You desire that person a little differently. You don't desire the beautiful flower in the ground. You desire the flower in your hand. And when you are attached like this, you actually end up changing that other person into something that you no longer desire. And this is where all this suffering really comes from, right? And this is where the suffering came from in our relationship, because I realized that I do want to make all these connections with all these other people, right? I do have this unlimited love. Love is not finite, right? And I do want to see these other people. And then of course, right, you didn't like that and you wanted to change that. And that's...
Fuck no.
What?
I did not like that.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And of course, that's a normal biological instinct, this sense of jealousy, right? But as spiritual beings, we can actually transcend that. Right. But of course, right. And then that started making me resenting the relationship, and then you resenting the relationship. It's this awful, horrible cycle. Right. But this is the thing that we have to realize, is that this is just the nature of reality. Right. So how could you transcend this jealousy without first being jealous? Right. Does that make sense? So if humans were never jealous, if they didn't have these biological needs, they could never be transcended. Right?
I think they're roadblocks. I like to compare it to driving to the stop sign.
Yeah, no, I like it. And this is the cool thing. So a lot of people in relationships, they'll try and change the external, right? So they try and change the dynamics in the relationship. So they feel jealous, they feel fear, and they try and change the relationship so they don't feel those ways. This is not the right way to do it. Jesus said, clean the inside of the cup and the outside will be clean. So that means you must change your internal state, and then that will be manifested externally. So if you are jealous and you keep trying to change your external situation, that's keeping you from changing the jealousy within. And it's much superior to change that and to heal from that jealousy within and get rid of that jealousy, because then in all other relationships, you will be absolutely free. If you just change the relationship externally, all other relationships, you'll still have that jealousy and still have that fear. You could be in the most secure marriage of all time, but still those emotions, those are yours, right? Well, those are the body minds, not really yours per se, but those emotions will stick with you. They're in your conceptual mind, and you will project those thoughts onto any situation. So it's really the thoughts that you must change, not the external situation. And so I think that's where we can really start to mend these broken relationships and have incredible ones. And then,
so we're getting back together? Just kidding.
I mean, the world is going to come together, right? There's not going to be a sense of, there's going to be these like separate relationships. The whole world is going to be a beautiful relationship. I could just be being grandiose, but I guess we'll see. So the last thing I really want to touch on, and which really, really, really helps explain this idea of forgiveness, is this concept of non-doership in Zen. You could call it free will, but I don't really like to use that word. That can rustle some feathers, right? But essentially, we blame other people for their action. We think that they have more control than they do, right? But when you really examine your mind closely, you'll realize that the entire universe is enacting upon you, and that you, this body mind, isn't actually in control. For example, a lot of people think that they're in control of their decisions, but these decisions are made by a personality, right? Given the same decision, two different personalities will make different decisions, or the same decision, right? But there's the potential to make different decisions, right? Based on different personalities. But where did this personality come from? Your personality is nothing more than the combination of your genetics and your exposure to society. That's it, right? You are born with these genetics, and you didn't pick your parents. Your parents raised you in a very certain way. They exposed you to a very specific school with very specific people and very specific media that impacted your mind in a very specific way. And if you were in the same shoes as anyone else, you would act the exact same way. The real you, the you as pure consciousness itself, right? If that pure consciousness was experiencing any other body mind, it would experience the exact same thing. There's no choice behind it, right?
I have a question.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we don't know that we're part of this like higher consciousness, does that mean that while we have this veil of forgetfulness that we're not a pure consciousness?
Well,
kind of like,
so consciousness is a very interesting subject, because a lot of people think that consciousness is this standalone entity, right? It's like a base entity that can stand alone, but that's not exactly how reality works. Everything is dependently arising on everything else. Consciousness cannot be without an object in consciousness in which to be conscious of, okay?
Wait.
I know.
Can you say that again?
So consciousness itself can't exist alone. Consciousness only arises with objects in consciousness. So it's tough. It's a really tough concept. But really, to answer your question, you can essentially uncover the veil of forgetfulness in this lifetime, right?
Well, yeah.
It's accessible. I mean, it's all in your subconscious, right? And so it is possible. Like, you can know who you are. Now, this is the interesting thing. You, on the deepest level, are absolute infinity. Absolute infinity can never actually be experienced, because the nature of infinity is that, or the nature of experience is that it's limited, right? There has to be something missing from experience in order for it to even be experienced. But this is the process of enlightenment, it's the infinite progression of knowing yourself. So you can have all these incredible experiences of different types of infinities. In reality, there are different types of infinities. There's a greater infinity from 0 to 10 than there is an infinity from 0 to 1, if you count every single number, including decimal places. Does that make sense? So like, there are infinite amount of numbers from 0 to 1, but there are a greater infinite amount of numbers from 0 to 10. It's trippy, right? This is something that must be experienced. It can't really be conceptualized. But yes, we can uncover the veil of forgetfulness in this lifetime. And I think one of the keys to awakening, really, and one of the keys to understanding that you're the universe, is realizing that the body mind isn't actually in control. You, the real you, as this infinite intelligence, this infinite, invisible, amorphous intelligence, that is what is in control. But the you that you think that you are right now has zero control whatsoever. You know, if I ask you to raise your hand, do this with me, ready? Make the decision to raise your hand, okay?
Teacher.
Yeah, yeah. So listen to this, right? You would have not raised your hand if it weren't for me telling you to do so, right?
Yep,
and I wouldn't have told you
obedient.
to do so if my life didn't go exactly how it went. My parents' lives didn't go exactly how it went. So it wasn't you that raised your hand. It was like the entire universe that raised your hand, right? And so you can start seeing the interconnectedness in everything, right?
I think does that go with, because I always thought you were kooky too when you said, just be in the present. Don't be anxious, just be in the present. But after having like the astral projection weird shit, now like because you told me to try to be more positive too. Mm-hmm. And when I was researching it, like the future and the past don't exist. What exists is the present moment. And it was very frustrating that like the more I learned about it, the more you were right.
Yeah.
Because I thought you were a little kooky.
Right.
But no.
Thing. I mean, it's tough to fathom these higher truths.
Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, it's such a mind. Like, am I allowed to cuss? It's such a mind freak because it's like it doesn't feel real. Like none of this feels real, and I feel crazy because you're the only person that was like, "Oh, I know." But if I tell that to someone else, like my doctor, they're gonna be like,
"Oh yeah, well, yeah, exactly."
You get locked up.
Look at how easy it is to go to a psych ward. I've been twice, right? It's interesting. Here's a really trippy thought: the present can't exist without the concept of the past and the future, or else it loses its meaning, right? When you think of the present moment, you're comparing it on a deeper subconscious level to the past and the future. They're all dependently arising, right? They're all actually the exact same thing. You can think about it like
I have a question. Sorry, I don't think I'm supposed to be asking this many questions.
No, you're good. You're good. I love it.
Like with the deja vu moments, because if we're in the present, does like experiences in like another lifetime that we were living, like you know, earlier in the reincarnation cycle, does the deja vu count as the past, but are we still in the present experiencing the past? Like, so with that,
we're always in the present, right? The past and the future only exist as concepts, right? So you'll see that there's a distinction between the direct experience of the present moment and then the conceptual mind. Okay, so the conceptual mind is actually happening within the present moment, but there's still this distinction. Okay, so actuality, right? The present moment is what is right now. So you're looking at your hand. Take away all concepts about your hand. Don't think of your hand as a biological thing or that it's even yours or anything like that, but just look at it. That is real. That is the present moment. That is direct experience. Now take your hand away and think about your hand. Okay, that's a little different. Okay, and that distinction is the distinction between the present moment and the conceptual mind. And as a good thing to go off of, the present moment, you could say, is more real than the conceptual mind. Even though, from a different perspective, they're all the same thing, it is useful to start focusing more on the present moment and getting out of the conceptual mind. It's really all about balance, right? But most people are far, far, far too stuck in the conceptual mind. The bottom line, okay, is that we've done some pretty terrible things to each other, obviously, right? Like we've hurt each other. And in a sense, right, we can say from a certain perspective that we've hurt each other, but also from another perspective that we actually just allowed ourselves to be hurt by the other person, right? And that's and that's kind of where forgiveness really comes in. So even though these terrible things happen between us, right, this is the power of this enlightenment, is that I'm able to actually talk to you and truly say that I have unconditional love for you, right? And me being
finally
I know, right? And me being absolutely serious about that. And that's why it's so beautiful, right? Because if we were not to be talking and actually on good terms, there would always be this little chunk of us that would be uneasy, right? There'd be something in the back of our mind that just doesn't sit well with us. So
like hatred. Instead
of casting people out of your life, and again, this is not some excuse to stay in toxic relationships, but it's to make peace with the other person.
I wasn't even thinking that.
Well, no, I'm not saying that to you. I'm saying that to the audience, right? But it's not an excuse to be in toxic relationships. But even if that other person refuses, if they're not conscious enough to even to have a conversation with you, at least yourself, be able to forgive them in your own mind, right? And let that go, right? And I think that that is so, so, so powerful and can really lead to some peace. So
Yep, Connor, you're not as kooky as people say you are now.